Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Mayo. On Thursday, it's Books Afternoon. This week, Red River by Lolita Tademy, and our 5 Live Book of the Month for December, Never Admit to Beige by Jonathan Drapes. Reviewed by our regular guests, Boyd Hilton, Sarah Harrison and Joel Morris. So our books this week, Red River by Lolita Tademy. Did I get that right?
You did.
It's fantastic to have you on. Thanks very much indeed. And our 5 Live Book of the Month for December, Never Admit to Beige by Jonathan Drapes. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Simon.
Now, we talk to established writers like Lolita all the time. We try and find first novels, new novelists, and that's you.
That is me, yeah.
Yeah. You're Australian.
The accent's a bit of a giveaway, yeah.
We don't want to talk to Australians very much at the moment.
I was going to bring my passport. I've got the visa, I swear.
Yeah? You sure?
Yes.
You're not going to mention the C word?
Oh, okay, if I'm asked.
That rhymes with wicked. He adds quickly.
I've got to say, to be in 5 Live, the spiritual home of Ash's coverage, it's very special for me.
Okay, well, that started quite well. So, we have Sarah Harrison and we have Boyd and Joel here. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Joel, let's do both covers together, please. Let's do...
At the same time.
Yes, Jonathan's book, Never Admit to Beige. You can read some chapters of that online, and let's do Red River as well.
Red River's red. Never Admit to Beige. It sort of fringes beige. It's sort of a sandy beach with a blue sky above it. It could be the Gold Coast where it's set, but just giving away the magic of publishing that apparently it's the Maldives. So it's posing as the Gold Coast.
That sounds like a nice trip for a photographer.
Yeah, or a quick Google search, one of the two. And in the front of the image, standing on the beach, is a Fijian wooden idol with a frowning face. A little sort of fertility god. I mean, in the book, he's supposed to be slightly better endowed than he is here because he's got a bit of an action man crotch.
Right.
There's not really much going on there.
Very tasteful.
But it's nicely done. I imagine someone would have airbrushed that out if it was necessary. And it says Jonathan Drapes Never Admit to Beige, and because Jonathan's a first novelist, it's not covered in lots of the author of and recommendations. It's left nicely
But give it a couple of years and the Jonathan Drapes will be bigger than any future.
Yeah, embossed in silver and on fire and things. Red River is a very classy red sunsetty cover with it's a woman standing at the edge of a river in the deep south of America, and it says Red River Lolita Tademy, which rhymes with Elite Academy. I quite like that. Lolita Tademy.
Font news?
Font news, I'm not going to do that today because there's so much to talk about else on the page. It's nice. It's swirly and sort of script font, and it says at the bottom here, an extraordinary novel of true lives in the deep south. And I always love the way they say deep south because they don't mean Portsmouth. You know, immediately they mean America. So Wild West never means Devon. We're supposed to just assume it's America. At the top it says, by the Oprah-picked and best-selling author of Cane River, which is probably going to be the big reason people will have heard of Lolita.
That's right. You get the Oprah pick.
And I love it.
Hey, that must mean at least 30 extra sales.
30, 35, somewhere in that range.
It's good to have you on, Lolita. Thanks very much indeed. We'll come to Red River in just a moment because there's an extraordinary story to go with that and with Cane River, which I think will bear repetition if you can go
hold
along
on
with that. So, Jonathan, we don't know about you because you've never written a novel before. So, give us your life history in sort of 30 seconds.
The life history in 30 seconds? Yeah. A career in science that wasn't really working. Decided to try and write a book. It was a long time getting published, but it got there in the end, and a lot of travel, and I've wound up here like many Australians in the UK.
So, explain the title, Never Admit to Beige, and our hero, Trigger Harvey. Just explain the setting here.
The title, Never Admit to Beige, was actually a bit of a throwaway line in the book that I thought someone would change, and it didn't get changed along the way, but I guess it refers to Trigger's ability to not admit to a dull life, which is basically the way the book flows out. Trigger's he's a bit of a train wreck to watch, actually. He's a young Englishman who's had his luck taken away from him, and basically his life's imploded. And as a result, the book starts with him arriving on the Gold Coast, desperately trying to track down the person that's taken his luck.
Hang on, can you just explain what on earth you're talking about? He's had his luck taken?
He's had his luck taken away from him. It was courtesy of a Fijian figurine, which may explain the cover a little bit, and a jaded ex-girlfriend. But not only that, it's been reallocated to someone else.
Right, so any luck that he did have through a kind of mysterious voodoo process has been taken from
Exactly.
him.
So he has a name and he has the Gold Coast, and that's all he has. So he arrives there a desperate man, and He suffers delusions of competency and delusions of wit, which get him into all sorts of trouble. But he does have a bit of a transformation, and he does realise that he has a bit more control over his life and his luck than he first realised.
Okay. What kind of take on the world does Trig have? How would you describe that?
Trig is he's from a slightly posh southwest London family, and I think he's led quite a sheltered life, and he's had a bit of a cocoon around his existence. And I think his arrival on the Gold Coast, like anyone arriving in a new country, he's taken further and further out of his comfort zone, and that cocoon slowly gets smashed apart, and he has to look at things differently and see the world in a different way. And his view on the world changes very much during the process of the book.
And describe the Gold Coast for anyone who's never been there, and why you put it there.
I love the Gold Coast. It's the greatest mixture of tackiness, and it's actually quite beautiful at the same time too. It's a little bit Las Vegas by the beach, but
like Blackpool. Have you been there?
I've not been to Blackpool, but
Great Yarmouth.
No, not Great Yarmouth either. I've got to get out more, obviously.
I'm not sure actually Great Yarmouth fits the Gold Coast necessarily. Anyway, but you put it there. Why?
It's an incredible place to explore. I spent a lot of time there as a kid growing up, and there's a sort of surface level of the Gold Coast that tourists see, which is bright lights and neon and sand, but underneath it there's actually a lot more going on. And the Japanese mafia managed to get their fingers in there a little bit a few years ago, or possibly a few decades ago now, which is very interesting to me.
Yes, and Trig meets them?
Trig does come across them, yeah, and given his incompetency and his clumsiness, it doesn't really work out so well, but luckily the head of the Japanese mafia he's dealing with is equally laughable, I guess.
And who's it aimed at?
You know what, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't sit down thinking, this is the audience I have in mind. But from people I know who've read it, it seems to go down well with young women. I'm not sure, maybe they like Trig's vulnerability. But to be honest, I think it's aimed at anyone who's looking for... It's a commercial read. It's something you take to the beach or read on the plane or read at the airport.
Sarah, who do you think it's aimed at?
Well, one out of two ain't bad. I mean, women, yes. Trig, bless his heart, I fell in love with this character. I'm a complete sucker for this sort of shucks, useless darling of a young man. I just completely adored him. It's very, very blokey stuff. It has 3 tremendous set pieces. You talk about his fantasies of competence. The surfing, the gambling, and the golf. I adored this. Here's the sequence where he tries to... I am learning golf at the moment. It's the most frustrating game in the world. He goes out there with his sort of, Japanese Mr. Big, and it's just... I wept with laughter. I thought it was so funny and so sweet. I think the cover is utter crap. Do go back and tell them. I don't even like... I mean, if you must have the word beige in the cover, don't actually put beige on the cover. And although this figurine is in the book, we don't want him on the cover. I want a fun cover. I mean, you're a bit gorgeous. Look at your author photograph. Why aren't you? Somebody like you. As I say, a complete hormonal surge. I thought it was absolutely delightful book. I am not the Radio 5 demographic. This book was probably not aimed at me.
Do you want to take Jonathan home with you?
I will take Jonathan home with me.
Just not the cover.
Brisbane memories. I thought it was really, really funny. I thought, as often happens, like a lot of these wonderful animation films, you see, the setup was better than the slightly crazed denouement, which takes the last quarter of the book, where it's more action and less humour. I like the sort of studies of Trig being useless and being lovable. I wasn't so keen on the all-action, but that's fine. It was all good fun. So, absolutely fab. I loved it, but do change the cover.
It doesn't say comedy, does it?
The cover... No, it doesn't say comedy. I was hoping it said quirky. Perhaps I missed that as well.
It says tourism, I think.
Grim.
Well, it was in the back of my mind, a December launch in London. The thought of a beach could be quite evocative.
Well, no, you're quite right. Boyd Hilton.
Nice.
Yeah, so what we've got here is a novel written by a strapping, handsome young Australian about a kind of unfit, bumbling doofus of a British person, a kind of upper-class twit verging with delusions of wit. You're completely... I feel like this guy is, in the week where you stay up all night listening to the most disastrous, humiliating Ashes defeat of all time. I feel like, oh my God, I can't give this guy... This book can't sell well as everything else.
Well, just be rude about it. Just say it's rubbish.
I do resent the whole thing, but... against all my better judgment, I did really enjoy it. It opens with a fantastic piece of observational humour about how you can judge people by the way they disembark from an aeroplane. And for me, that was worthy of, like, Seinfeld, Seinfeld stand-up, and there's no greater compliment from me than that. And every now and then there's another great bit of observational comedy that you wove in very well. It's funny, above all else. It is entertaining, it's funny, and it's very... I think it is... sometimes I felt it was a little bit blokey. I mean, it's interesting you said you hope young women, very cleverly, will be interested in it, because I think, for me, it feels like, the kind of thing that Nick Hornby fans and Tony Parsons fans might like. But having said that, there is a different tone to it, because I do think, because it's written in the first person by this bloke who you're kind of laughing at as well as with, I think it adds a kind of another layer to it, if you like, on top of the normal blokish kind of books that one might read. I very much enjoyed it.
That leaves you, Joel. It's going pretty well, I think, Jonathan.
I'm getting nervous now.
It's funny, actually, finding out that you are an Australian, because all the way I started reading this and thought, it's a British hero, and about 4 pages in I worked out as an Australian writing it. There's something about the way Australians talk, that sort of Barry Humphries irreverence, that even though it's supposed to be sort of Hugh Grantish bumbling bloke, he does think and talk like an Aussie. And that makes it that gives him an amazing comic voice. I think that is one of the big pluses of the book. It is very, very funny, it's very witty. It's got a little bit of because the Gold Coast is sort of vulgar and full of retired people in casinos and lots of money and things. It's got a slight tang of Carl Hiaasen about it, the idea of a sort of funny, larger than life low lifes living the high life. I didn't even prepare that. That's very lucky. I might go home now. But yeah, it's sort of very, very big, and it's interesting. Jonathan's wearing a Big Lebowski t-shirt, which I think is the biggest giveaway. It's got that feeling of when you get in sort of good Coen Brothers movies, that sort of big, larger than life characters are going to do preposterous things, and the fate of everyone's going to fall like dominoes. And I must admit, I do agree with Sarah that I think the setup is better than the denouement. It's such a good idea. The moment it comes in and you think this is going to be like a big Aussie My Name is Earl, about a guy trying to get his fate back, trying to switch karma back, and the sense of humour buoys that along. I love My Name is Earl, and it had a lot of that spirit. I did feel that, as it goes towards the end, as a lot of things do if they're comic books, it runs out of a little bit of that vigour and steam. But apart from that, my only worry was I did feel a bit bad being complicit in a sort of jailbait love interest. That's the blokiest bit of it, is you're supposed to all the way through quite like his love interest, and I did feel slightly uncomfortable with that, which I think is one thing that might turn some women off it.
I didn't mind the love interest. I thought that was fairly... these things happen. She's very young.
Is there something you want to talk about?
Oh, God, no. But what I was going to say, I did feel... I got the feeling that, in terms of the ending, that you wrote it without necessarily knowing how you were going to finish it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was wondering about that.
No, the entire book was written not knowing how it was going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was just... Did we send you a copy?
You sent a copy, but it came a little late. But I did have a chance to
look
crack
at the cover?
No, I had a chance to read pages, and I have to tell you that I haven't gotten to the end that people are a little contentious about, but it was very fun and very clever, and I do want to know what happens next. And I do want to know why you never admit to Beige. I haven't quite gotten to that.
It is out at completely the wrong time of year, though. This needs to be Book of the Month now, and someone keep it until about June when you're getting on the plane.
Except that, all the ads for your summer holidays, they start on Boxing Day.
Yeah. So save this book up for the plane and the beach.
Yeah, we're rubbishing the ending. Well, not rubbishing it, but saying it tailed off a bit or got a bit... But one of the lines I love most of all that made me fall about was where he's standing in front of all these Japanese Mr. Bigs in his silly helmet. Don't ask, a gentle listener, but there he is. And it's all terribly tense. And he says something completely over the top and thinks, I shouldn't have said that. And then he thinks, no, because these are the people who made Godzilla a massive hit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. It's really good.
So are you going to rewrite the ending, or...?
I think I might have to now. No, I think I'm going to let this one lie and sort of try and move on to something else now.
Now, we sent a copy to listener review, who's Lorna McGinty. Hello, Lorna.
Hello there.
And where are you?
I'm in Warsaw.
And what sort of stuff do you read normally?
I read John Grisham, that kind of thing.
Right.
A lot of chick lit.
Okay.
But I do like Ben Elton, which this is really reminded me of Ben Elton. Really.
Oh, okay. So your thoughts on Never Admit to Beige by Jonathan Drapes? How would you sum it up, Lorna?
Oh, one of the funniest books I've ever read. I was crying with laughter many, many times.
Did you find the ending a bit disappointing?
Not really, no. I must say.
Your glass is always half empty, isn't it?
I thought it was okay.
So if there's another book by Jonathan Drapes coming out, you'd be interested?
Oh, definitely.
Lorna, thanks very much indeed. This from our website, because there are a number of chapters up there go to the Five Live website, find the book of the month, and there's some chapters there, and there's a place for you to send in your thoughts. This has just been posted. We're posted today. It's not often that a novel achieves genuine laugh-out-loud moments. Never Admit to Beige caused me to nearly choke on my coffee on more than one occasion with the kind of original quips I wish I could think of myself. The story revolves around a sequence of events so unlikely that it takes a few chapters to suspend disbelief enough to just enjoy it. The premise is that of a Fijian curse upon the protagonist, Trigger Harvey. As if the curse and the name aren't ridiculous enough, there are the Yakuza gangs, world champion surfers, and unlikely casino wins to cope with. It all sounds pretty crazy, and in all honesty it is, but it's also great fun and a genuine page-turner. If you don't mind dialogue that sometimes sounds like the script to a computer game, and you could do with being cheered up, then Never Admit to Beige is going to have you happily engrossed for a couple of days. Well, maybe a couple of hours. Although I did find the ending a bit disappointing. Actually, it doesn't say that. I just added that bit. The number of times that we've heard the phrase laughing out loud and crying with laughter is... We've only heard about 5 reviews, and it's cropped up quite a lot. Jonathan, you must be quite encouraged by it.
I'm incredibly chuffed. It's humour's a really funny thing, and I've read this thing so many times now that I'd lost track of whether things were funny or not. So it's really encouraging to hear this, yeah.
This is 5 Live, so we're talking books. Next week, by the way, we're reviewing The Gift by Lewis Hyde, published originally in America in 1983. It's the first time it's been out in hardback in the UK. It has been described as a groundbreaking book about creativity. And also The Tenderness of Wolves by Steph Penny, which is a thriller set in Canada in the 19th century. It's just been shortlisted for the Costa Book Awards. These used to be known as the Whitbread Book Awards. And if you'd like to review one of those, mayo@bbc.co.uk is the email. All the details on our website, bbc.co.uk. Red River by Lolita Tademy. We've described the cover. Now, let's just explain the story, Lolita, from Cane River and what you established there and where this book is going to take us then.
Yeah, I did quite a bit of research, and I ended up writing Cane River back in 2001. And that was the story of 4 generations of colored Creole slave women in Louisiana, in America. Starting in the 1830s and going a little beyond the 1930s. And that was initiated by my actually finding the bill of sale of my great-great-great-great-grandmother. Red River is the story of my father's family, and Cane River was the story of my mother's family. In Red River, it is also a historical novel, multi-generational, but it follows the men, and specifically it follows 2 families as they live and die in Louisiana and their successive generations after that. And the main setup for Red River is a standoff in a courthouse over a contested election where black men could actually vote after the Civil War. And it had some calamitous results, ending in a massacre of many of the men who were trying to protect the office holders there.
And it's a massacre that actually happened?
It's a massacre. This is based on fact. And the first half of the book is very tightly aligned with real events as they unfolded, but told from a different point of view, told from the point of view of the men in the courthouse, several of whom were my ancestors, in effect. But I dramatized it as a family story.
So how, because people will be intrigued as they go through it, as to how much is your family story, how much is other historical fact, and how much of it you've generated from your imagination.
Some of this, some of that, and then it comes together.
A little bit of that, and a little bit of this.
It is quite a lot of research, and it is quite a lot of family stories. But then I wove it, and of course put some dramatic emphasis into it, and made sure that there was a narrative arc, and that there were instances where I couldn't possibly have known what happened. But I made some intuitive leaps according to the kind of people I know that I came from, and put together a story that way.
What were you doing when you discovered your great-great-great-grandmother's bill of sale as a slave?
I was actually, I had, in a prior life, been an executive in a high-technology, Fortune 500 high-technology company in Silicon Valley in the U.S., and decided that I really wanted to do something very different with my life. And I left there and got very involved in my family research as just a personal hobby. And it was only probably 18 months after that I picked up a pen and started writing it as the first book, Cane River.
Let's get some thoughts of our reviewers. Boyd Hilton, what did you make of Red River by Lolita Tademy?
Well, I must say, a bit like, as I was saying about Jonathan's book, how I was slightly dreading it in a way. There was something about this one, with the Oprah picked on the cover, and, you know, I've read a lot of Toni Morrison in the past, and I like Toni Morrison, but I've also read a lot of sub-Toni Morrison books, you know, about slavery, and I felt they've been reaching to kind of get the kind of power that her books have, and failed. I was thinking, this could be another one of those books. But then you read it, and it's not like that at all. It's very different, and it's, for me, unique. Like, I haven't read a novel that's based on fact, but actually Lolita weaves in documents into the novel. So you turn a page and it will hit upon an article reprinted from a newspaper, which in fascinating language, the language of the newspapers in those days will account for what you've just read about or you're about to read about. And it adds a whole interesting layer to the narrative, which I thought was extremely successful and absolutely intriguing. You just learn a huge amount about this whole world post-slavery. It's very topical in this country because we've just had Tony Blair controversially quasi-apologising about Britain's role in slavery, and I kept thinking about that because a lot of what people said about that was it's all about the effect that slavery still has, even to this day, on particularly black family life, if you like. And a lot of this novel is about the effect that it has through generations on family life, and immense, absolutely fascinating, every page.
Did you read any of what Tony Blair was saying? I don't suppose it's front page news in the United States, but the debate about slavery and reparations certainly is.
Yeah, and that's an ongoing discussion in the States, and then I heard about Tony Blair's statement when I was over here.
Did he judge it about right, do you think, or was there more to say?
I think that there's plenty more to say, but I'm less interested in apology or non-apology and more interested in any action that's taken. Mostly what I want is acknowledgement that these things really happened and that we're still living with some of the repercussions today.
Joel, what did you make of Lolita's book?
Well, I like Boyd, I love the blend of fact and fiction. I think that was just absolutely wonderful. The fact that you could literally turn a page and be reminded that this wasn't a story that was being made up, that this wasn't being over-dramatised. It was being dramatised but not over-dramatised. There are roots to it, there are photographs and records. And the fact that it's something fascinating to do with something that a lot of people do, which is to investigate their family history. And a lot of people, when they investigate their family history, don't find much. One of the joys of being, I imagine, an African-American woman now is that America's history for African-Americans is very, very brief. My great-great-grandfather was working in a bakery in Glasgow. It wouldn't make a great book. Your great-great-grandfather...
You never know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a lot of bun making.
You've been up to all sorts.
Eclair, crazy man. But what you find from this is that you go back of what feels like, certainly to someone who's grown up in Britain, where our history is assumed to have happened 500, 600, 1,000 years ago, that within what feels like very, very recent memory, people were involved in momentous historical events, and certainly not want to say the same thing about it, the opening of this book is its strongest part. The siege in the courthouse is incredibly powerful, especially when you read the documents and read how it was reported outside, that this may be the first time these people have been given a voice, and that's an incredibly powerful thing. I think the rest of the book would always struggle to keep up with that, but if you really want to read an amazingly powerful story about a piece of history that probably hasn't been told this way, I mean, all I knew about the Reconstruction was the R.E.M. album title, and now I know a little bit about what happened in the Deep South after the Civil War. It's a stunning book, beautifully written, great idea.
Sarah Harrison.
Yes, I didn't know. That's the feeling I so often get after reading a fantastic historical novel set, you know, in a certain period about a very specific event. I didn't know about this extraordinary stand that was made at the Colfax courthouse that you described, that your two ancestors took part in. And it was a stand. It was principled. It was kind of calm. They were calm. It was described as a riot. You've got a picture of the sort of memorial outside the courthouse, which describes it as a riot. You know, 3 white men killed and 150.
Unusual sort of riot with death.
Exactly,
like that,
and it wasn't right. It was a stand, a principled stand, and I thought that all that was so moving. The natural drama and tragedy and shock of the first half, I thought was incredible. And it sounds as if I got something against second halves. I haven't, because I thought this was an incredible book, and photographs amazing, the whole thing. But because you had to gallop through a lot in the second half, I felt more years. You were whizzing through the years in the second half, and I slightly missed that natural your storytelling voice, which is brought out so much by the terrible drama of the first half. Wasn't there quite so much in the second half, but I absolutely loved it. And photographs, I mean, it's so extraordinary to see your parents and you as a child there, and to know who all these people were going back over the generations. And we were, a couple of years ago, I was saying to you beforehand, we went through the southern states, couldn't go to New Orleans because of Katrina. In fact, you've got a scene where the family have to move out of their house because of floods. They have to do this every year. They move up to a tented encampment on a hill and live there, and then come back and clear up. I thought, damn, what a way to live. Just extraordinary. So, as a piece of history, piece of writing, I loved it, and I was opened out by it. Thanks.
And it is a monumental achievement to make old family photographs interesting. As anyone who sat on someone's knee and been shown them. This is a storytelling triumph.
Absolutely.
That ought to be said, Lolita, shouldn't it, actually? Because people will hear, a book with family photographs. Is it like an album? Just explain what the photographs are and why you decided to include them and how it sort of works in the book as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I really wanted to have a contrast between real life events as they were folding, but have a reminder that these were real events and these were real people that lived. And that could have been my family, or they could have been some other family. That wasn't the point. The point just was they were real people living through real events in a very dignified and strong way, and in ways that really enabled me to have the life that I have today. So this is not a traditional family story, as it were. It really goes beyond that.
Jonathan, did you get a chance to have a look at Lolita's book?
Like Lolita, I got it on Saturday. I'm about 3/4 way through it, and again, I love the inclusion of the real photos and documentations, and it's just enough to remind you that this is based on true family history. And for me, it's one of those books that changes your perspective. I'm sure when I reach the end of it, I'll be a slightly different person to when I started reading it.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, another wonderfully uplifting thing, of course, is the story of the school that runs through it. The fact that the schooling is part of your. Is it your great grandfather? I'm trying to remember the generations now.
It's two greats.
It's great grandfather. He sort of had this dream of the school, and it's pushed forward, and it really happened, and there it is. That's terrific. So it's not, as you might say, all doom and gloom. It was terrible stuff, but out of it came this, and the phoenix feather. The feather in the hat. Do you remember the guy describes it as this isn't a heron's feather or whatever, it's a phoenix's feather, and that's a lovely image that it was a phoenix feather.
There's a real sense in this that the reason this book has been written is that Lolita wouldn't be here today without these people. Yeah. I think that's the thing that comes out of any study of family history, is you realise that if these people have made different decisions, if Lolita's great-grandfather had died in the sea or anything, her life may have been completely different. Maybe she wouldn't be here. If the school hadn't been built, maybe her family would be a completely different situation. That there's consequences to the history, to your family's immediate history, which is a very powerful thing to be reminded.
So what kind of a person was Sam Tademy?
Sam Tademy was a man that was calm in the face of great oppression, but he was also incredibly stubborn, incredibly determined, and he had a motto, which is you have to make you have to go over the stumbling blocks. You cannot let that stop you. And he was absolutely determined. One of the things that is associated with the Tademy name in this remote, very small town in Louisiana is that he brought the first school for, at the time they called them colored people, but he brought the first school there, and that sounds like a very small accomplishment today, but back then you could lose your life trying to open up a school. And he was so determined after the Civil War that there would be education for his own sons, for his sons' sons, and that's what he wanted to do for the town. And he had so much faith in education. He was a quiet man. He had a great deal of determination and dignity. And I see that, I saw that in my own father and in my great-grandfather. So this is something that has come down the line. I see it in myself as well from time to time.
And how easy was it to find this information? Because when you do go back 2 or 3 generations, it starts to be quite difficult unless you were a notable in society.
That's exactly right. To trace African American history is very, very difficult. It's one of the reasons that I decided to write both of these books. If not me, then who would? I had the time, I had the energy, I had the real drive to do it. But the records were not at all easy to find. Most of the information about Sam Tatamy and his son Jackson Tatamy, who jointly really started the school, were from family stories. But I could also go back and get records because they accumulated a little bit of land in a place called the Bottom. And so it was piecing together all of these disparate facts, one fact here, one fact there, to try to figure out who he was, what he was like. But it was very clear from the obstacles put up at the time that he was a strong, determined man.
Now that you've written both these books, from your mother's side and from your father's side, what comes next?
Well, there pretty much isn't anybody left, so there won't be another multi-generational family saga. What comes next for me is probably a more lighthearted novel, as Jonathan has written. I wish I could be that quirky.
Corky.
But I really would like to do something that is totally from my imagination, and maybe something where I don't have to hold the main characters in quite as much reverence as I needed to do in both Cane River and Red River.
Jonathan, what do we get from you next? Or does it depend on the number of people who buy this one?
Yes, pretty much. No, I'm in the middle of something else at the moment, which I'm hoping it's funny, but possibly not as gaggy as the first one, and maybe a little bit more satirical. But I've had to change settings a few times already, so I'm not quite sure where it's going yet, but it's getting there.
Don't get too serious.
Okay.
But on the basis of life so far as a novelist, you quite like it?
Loving it. To be honest, I think any aspiring author, just to get that book in a bookshop is a huge thing. So to get an accolade like this, for example, it's absolutely incredible, and it's an absolute bonus, and it's very encouraging, and it sort of seems like possibly there is a career there in the future now.
Our reviewers on today's Daily Mail: Boyd Hilton, Sarah Harrison and Joel Morris. The books Red River by Lolita Tatamy and Never Admit to Beige by Jonathan Drapes. You can read some of the chapters online, bbc.co.uk/5live. That's it for the Daily Mail. Another one tomorrow.
Thanks for downloading from the BBC. To find out about other BBC podcasts, including the Ashes Close of Play, go online.
bbc.co.uk/5live.